Welcome to the Wingman Show. My name is Drew Brown, and my wingman, my man, the number one guy I know, Dr. Paul Thompson. What's up, brother? Welcome to the Wingman Show, where we float like butterflies and sting like bees. Rumble, you two badass jet pilots, rumble. Welcome to the Wingman Show. My name is Commander Drew Brown. My wingman, my friend, the guy who watches my six is Dr. Paul Thompson. How are you, brother Paul?
Hello, Commander Drew. It's good to see you. You're looking very chipper, and it looks like we're dressed the same way today.
We are. It's a very special day today, Paul. Paul, believe it or not, this is our 200th show.
200?
Yeah. How cool is that?
Yeah, we survived to do 200. That's a blessing in itself.
No doubt about it. And you know, we start off our shows always with quotes. Well, I want to start this show off with the most famous quote. And they said that this is the second most famous quote in the world. The first was Shakespeare's "To be or not to be." And the second is my daddy's "Float like a butterfly and sting like a bee." And that was by Drew Bundini Brown, who trained Muhammad Ali, who's my dad. Now, my favorite quote of all time is "Great spirits have always encountered violent opposition from mediocre minds." And that's from my man, Albert Einstein. The quote I want to tell you that I just found out that I really, really like, and I'm going to go with today, is "The longer I live, the more I feel alive." I don't know who quoted that, but that's me right now. The longer I live, the more I feel alive. Now, Dr. Paul has a quote too that's his favorite. Paul, you want to say your quote?
Yes, I do. This quote is it's not exactly it's not Shakespeare, but it's got a little shake in it. And the quote is this: "The only thing worse in life than being screwed up is being screwed up and not knowing it." And that comes from a landing signal officer, LSO, by the name of Shaky Jake. Shaky Jake. The only thing worse in life than being screwed up is being screwed up and not knowing it. And I've found that to be true. It's been decades ago since I heard that, but that has rung true since then.
That is wrong true, and I have to give this disclaimer. Screwed up is not the exact words that Shaky Jake, the LSO, said, but we had to calm it down for our show. Well, ladies and gentlemen, please, we are so excited to be here. We are called The Wingman Show, and that's because I thought up the idea of having two black, successful Navy badass jet pilots do a show and not talk about what's wrong in the world, but talk about what's right. We have made it. We have become successful. We have become successful not through basketball or sports, not through singing or a talent like that, but through education. And that's the most important thing. So today we're going to learn a little bit, just a little bit, about our lives. Who in the hell are the wingmen anyway? I'm going to start this off. Dr. Paul, we have so many similarities that it's crazy. First of all, we were both born in Harlem, New York. We were both raised in New York City. Paul was raised in Queens. I was raised in Harlem and Brighton Beach. From there, we both are actually Navy jet attack pilots. Now, there's a big difference between a fighter pilot and attack pilot. The difference is when a fighter pilot does his job, he crosses out one name at a time in a telephone book when we had telephone books. But when we do our job, we rip out pages. So we're both Navy jet pilots. Then we are both FedEx commercial airline pilots and both actually retired from FedEx. We both have a boy and a girl as children. Both of our daughters actually played Division I basketball. There's a lot more similarities, but let's start off with your childhood, Dr. Paul. You want to tell me a little bit about being raised in the streets of Queens, New York?
Well, yeah, it was great. It was really great. Um, talking about it, I was an only child, and that's another similarity I think we have.
That's right.
The only child. And Queens is great. Queens is all I know. Yes, born in Harlem. Don't remember anything about it. I was just, we moved to Queens and I was probably like one or something, who knows, and was there ever since. A great place.
Paul, let me ask you something. They talk so bad about New York City back in the day. Did you think it was rough in New York where we grew up?
I didn't at all. I thought it was every day. It was calm. It was quite calm and quite loving. Things changed at a certain point in time, but for the most part, we went places. I didn't fear anything in particular. A couple jerks here and there, but primarily no. Leave bikes out. We had bikes, just leave them on the street, come back out. They were there, locks on doors, maybe, maybe not. Not a big deal until the little change happened around 67, 68.
Paul, tell me something about your early schooling.
Early schooling. I remember going to public school PS 36 in New York. They called them PSs, public school. And it was a block and a half away from me. And there were no traffic lights at the time across a busy boulevard. So they had our crossing guards was a big New York City cop. I remember his name was Hershey. We were supposed to call him Officer Hirsch, but we called him Hershey. I still remember that. And he would stop the car. He's a huge guy. He's probably like 6'6". He would stop traffic. We would cross. He was nice to us the whole time. That was my first interaction with police was Hershey. We would
Wow.
cross, and at the end of the day, he would be there, and we'd come back, and that was it. Walk your block and a half. How about you?
Well, I grew up in Harlem, New York, where you were born, but I stayed there. And the difference was I grew up in Harlem during the week and I went to Brighton Beach, Brooklyn during the weekend because my mother and father, my mother is white, my father is black. I am Jewish. My mother was Jewish, so I was raised Jewish. So I went between a Jewish neighborhood in Brighton Beach and an all black neighborhood in Harlem. And my mother was the only white person in our entire projects. And I never thought about it. I never heard a word about it. So and I went to PS 171. And how about this, Paul? You're going to trip out. My school was a block and a half away, also.
Really? Isn't that something? Did you have any I think I saw an animal a second ago. Did you have any pets when you were growing up? Did you have any big dogs in Brighton
No,
Beach or Harlem?
no, you're not allowed to have pets in the projects. But my father once got me a dog, and we couldn't keep him very long. But me and mom, we had a cat, and her name was Chitlins.
Chitlins?
Yes, Chitlins.
Okay. Oh, she must have been kind of nervous.
Yes.
Nervous cat.
Well, I was a very happy little boy. I have to tell you that. I had the best little childhood in the world. And as you know, when we played as kids, we made up our own games. We didn't have videos and all that. So we used to play hot peas and butter. That's a game where you had to go to base or you get beat with a belt. We used to play kick the can. We used to play Scully. We played basketball. We had water gun season. We had top season. I had a great time as a kid in Harlem.
Yeah, we played in the street a lot, and the traffic wasn't too heavy. We call out for each other, play ball in the street, stick ball, softball. If someone got a softball, usually we hit a tennis ball or something cheap or pincy pinky, and that's how we were active. Everybody was active. Everybody could run, and then we were actually blessed and not, didn't know it. Uh,
Very much so. And Paul, something that was different about my life that many people can't say. I remember Dad was looking for a job. Now, my uncle was Sugar Ray Robinson, and he was known as the greatest fighter to ever live at that time. Sugar Ray Robinson. So, Daddy used to bring me up to the gym all the time when I was a very young man, and we'd watch Sugar Ray train, and Daddy became his trainer. Then all of a sudden, Daddy didn't have a job. And I remember me and Mom just hoping he would find a job. And he came home one day and he said, I got a job. I'm training this guy called Cassius Clay. And we were just happy that, that he had a job. And we didn't have a clue who Cassius Clay was. Well, little did we know he would become the most famous man in the world at one time. And so that means my dad trained the two greatest fighters that ever stepped into a ring. So the kids, how about this, Paul? The kids in my neighborhood, they didn't believe my dad trained Cassius Clay. So one day, and it was I think I was in third or fourth grade, I was in a play, and all of a sudden, through the back doors of the auditorium, Cassius Clay and Drew Bundini Brown broke through those doors, walked in. The entire place went crazy. I actually have a picture. My grandmother, Bubba, was there. And so I have a picture with me, the champ, and Bubba that you'll see. But I had a pretty interesting life by my dad training Muhammad Ali.
When they came through the auditorium there, how old were you? What grade were you?
I was about 8 or 9 years old because I remember me and my mom listening to the Cassius Clay Sonny Liston fight, the one where he won his championship. And we were just so happy that Cassius Clay won. That means Daddy would keep a job.
So did you see a lot of like entertainers when you were young? Because he was around a very famous company, Muhammad
I
Ali.
have to tell you something. I grew up around some of the most famous people in the world. Matter of fact, I did the Jack Parr show, which later became the Johnny Carson show, the Jay Leno show, and now it's the what's his name?
Jimmy Fallon.
Jimmy Fallon. That's right. So I did the Jack Parr show, and it was me and Liberace and Cassius Clay all in a picture. I'll try to find that picture, but if not, I grew up around a lot of very famous people. So famous people didn't mean much to me. It didn't. It wasn't a big deal to me at all.
Wow. Yeah, seeing some of your pictures in the past, the famous people you showed, these are folks that I'd see on the Ed Sullivan show
That's
every once in a while for 45 seconds or 2 minutes.
That's right. I even have a picture with Dad and Michael Jackson. So I was actually very lucky that way. Well, tell me about your teenage years and you going to high school and stuff like that.
Yeah, high school was really cool. It was like about the closest school I went to. After PS 36, I was actually a bus. They used to have a thing called busing. That's a term that has gone away many decades ago, but I was like a bus child early on in fourth grade. I ended up in Holliswood, Queens, which it was like a world away, but it's probably a 15-minute drive. It was like 1,000 years away in different ways. And that was okay. And then the high school was actually closer. It was like half the distance. So that was really nice. I took one bus and walked about a mile, and that was an improvement from what I did before. But high school was great. Had some great friends. That high school was demolished. I believe it became a condominium complex about 35 years ago, maybe 40 years ago, I was told. So things come, things go. You never would never know it was there. But I was in St. Albans, Queens, and St. Albans had a lot of very famous people that I didn't know until recently that Babe Ruth actually lived there at one point.
Yeah, you told me that. And you said you knew something about Count Basie. You used to see him.
Yeah, I never saw Count Basie, but he had a disabled daughter that would walk on our streets sometimes with a like a nurse, a care nurse. And this is when people used to walk because he lived a long way away from us, an area called Adderley Park, which was close to St. Albans. In fact, they touched each other. Adderley Park, I think, is a historical district right now. And a lot of famous jazz musicians went to that part of Queens, the St. Albans, Adderley Park area. Jamie Brown was there. He had a place there, and he built a place for his mother right off Linden Boulevard.
Wow. Did you learn anything real special? Did anything real special happen to you in high school?
Uh, no, I got to be around a lot of different people. Didn't travel a great deal. Travel a little bit because I'm a first generation American. Actually, my father's from Jamaica, my mother's from Canada, they met when he was a student. He went to Dalhousie University in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and they met, married. He became a citizen, like right away, and he stayed in New York City. Like I said, I don't have any memories of Harlem at all. I had relatives that lived in Harlem, so we would go and visit, periodically. So I know something about it. I still remember 125th Street, vividly, with the bright signs, bright neon signs. But high school's fantastic. Met some good friends. Sadly, some of them are no longer here, but I consider myself blessed. And there's a guy named Stephen A. Smith and a lot of famous rappers who were from either that area or right around that area. St. Albans, Queens, Hollis, Queens, South Ozone Park, Jamaica, Queens. A lot of your rap and hip hop comes from that area.
Very much so. Well, I went to high school in Brighton Beach. I went to high school in Brooklyn. And I went to Lincoln High School in Brooklyn, and a lot of famous people went to Lincoln. One of them was my mom. No, I went to, but I wanted to tell you something about Brighton Beach that was really shocking to me. It was an all-white Jewish neighborhood, and I told you before, living in Harlem, my mother being white, I never heard anything about white or black. So in Brighton Beach was the first time that an adult ever lied to me. And it was the first time that kids didn't want to play with me because of my color. And I'll never forget it. I used to follow, and this is an important part of my life. I used to chase these kids because I wanted to be their friends. And it seems like they didn't want to be my friend. And it was a very hurtful feeling. And when I told you I learned an adult could lie, is because I remember I saw all the guys going up to Richie Kaufman's house. And so I ran behind him and I went up and knocked on the door, and Richie Kaufman's mother answered the door. And I said, "Hey, I'm here to play with the guys." And she told me right in my face, "They're not here." And they were there. And it just blew my mind because I had no idea that an adult could lie. So that was an important part. And that has a lot to do with my success by me chasing after those kids, because I swore some way, somehow, I'd beat the hell out of those kind of kids. And I eventually did, Paul. But I went to Lincoln High School. I played basketball. I actually didn't make it as a junior, believe it or not. I made it as a senior. I made the team as a senior. And so my basketball jacket only had 1 year on it. But I went to Lincoln High and I had a good time. Tell me about this. What happened? How'd you get to college and all that?
I did college. Well, that was the trajectory I was put on from probably the second grade or so. And it was just something that was kind of expected. And it's interesting that just about, I'd say all my friends did the same thing, even though we're from different households. There was a lot of stress on education, particularly as opportunities came, as discrimination laws started to take effect very, very slowly. When opportunities presented themselves, everybody jumped. That's what everybody was looking for. Nobody wants to be treated badly. So the fact that so many had sacrificed just so that you could go to school, it was impressed upon you is that you have a mission, and your mission is to become as educated as you can, as best you can, whatever that is. And that was the mantra, across the groups that I was a part of and groups that I observed. Everybody wasn't perfect. Not saying everybody was perfect, but everybody wanted to aspire to be something greater.
So let me ask you this. You wound up going to a great university, University of Pittsburgh. How did that come about?
That came about kind of randomly. I think I applied to like three colleges. The counselor, said, "Okay, these are places that I think would suit you." Okay, fine. There's no internet. There's no research. I don't know anybody. I applied to Michigan State, University of Illinois, and University of Pittsburgh. I was accepted to all three. And my plan was actually to go to Michigan State. They were offering all kinds of stuff. And the reason really wanted to go to Michigan State was because it was a big time name. They had good sports teams, and I'd heard of the teams. That's all I knew. I liked the sound of the name. And then later on, I kind of looked and I said, it's cold up there. That's a long way away. Pittsburgh is closer. It's cold there too, but it's closer. So on the basis of that alone, that alone, I took Pittsburgh. Never
Wow.
been there, don't know anybody there. Uh, totally virgin territory.
Wow. That's kind of like what happened to me. The difference in my growing up is my dad was kind of psycho about education. I'm going to tell you something. It was a nuclear weapon if I ever got in trouble in school. So I had two choices my dad gave me. One was college, and the other was death. And I say that because I never thought that you couldn't go to college. That's all I ever heard was college, college, college. And that's because my dad didn't have any education. And he knew that was the one thing that was stopping him was going to college. So by me playing basketball my senior year, I sent out letters. I had some scholarships, believe it or not, Paul. I had them in New York. I had scholarships at Hunter, Yeshiva. I could have went to college for free in New York. But let me tell you something. I had traveled with my dad already. We used to go down to Miami to watch the champ train. So I had already been doing some traveling. And I will tell you this, I tried to get as far away from New York as I could. And do you know what I did? I got a letter from his name was Coach Lou Henson. He was a famous coach, actually.
I
But he,
remember it, mate. I remember.
yes,
I
he
remember.
was for Illinois for a while. But before that, he was a coach for New Mexico State University. And I have the letter, but they wrote back the coach a letter and said he'd be happy for me to walk on the team. So I didn't even have a scholarship. I don't know how I got the money, but I got out to New Mexico State University, Paul.
That's amazing. And you didn't know any? Did you know anybody out in New Mexico?
Not a clue. I had nobody. And Paul, let me tell you, it was the best year of my life to date. I had the bestest time in college. Now, we went to school in New York. So the first thing they always do in New York is take attendance. So my first class at New Mexico State, there were 300 people in this class. And I was like, how the hell are they going to take attendance? And the kid next to me said, they're not going to take attendance. They don't care if you're here or not. Well, they should have never told me that. I had more fun that year than anybody, except I flunked out of school. I had a 1.6 grade point average, Paul. And combined with the best year of my life, I needed to do something. So I told them I actually played football for them. I did not make the basketball team, believe it or not, but I did make a Division I football team for spring football. And Paul, I never played football with pads on in my life, but I made the team. Anyway, I said I would do better next year, and they said, you might do better next year, but you won't do better here. So I got kicked out of school. What I did is I went to back to Brooklyn. I went back to live with my mom, and I went to Kingsborough Community College in Brooklyn, New York. And that's where I realized that if I love being in college, I'm going to have to study too. And so I studied and had fun and studied and played ball. And I got a full scholarship to Southern University in New Orleans.
Mhm. So it sounds like you became more focused with a little age and experience.
100%. And I realized that college was the place. I mean, it was finally, I was away from my parents. I could be who I wanted to be. But one of the things, if this is a secret for anybody out there going to school, if you do well in school, nobody bothers you. If you do bad in school, everybody bothers you. So I started doing well in school, and it really worked out very well. Southern University, Paul, was an HBCU. Now, remember, coming up in New York, I knew nothing about historically Black universities at all. I had no clue about it. And remember, our sports teams, Paul, were the Knicks, the Nets, the Yankees, the Mets, the Rangers, the Islanders, the Giants, the Jets. We had no college teams. I had no idea that college sports was that big, actually. But I went to an all Black college in New Orleans. And if you think I had fun in New Mexico State, boy, did I have a great time in New Orleans going to college there.
That must be something. I think it'd be kind of hard to keep your concentration, but you obviously had more discipline. You were able to do it. So in New Mexico State, your year there, you got an A in having fun and less than an A in everything else.
That's correct. And I did something that I shouldn't have done. I don't think you can do it now. But when I went to Kingsborough Community College, I didn't bring my grades from New Mexico State. I went there with my high school transcript, told them I took a year off and I'd like to go to college. So I started brand new again. And that's why I was able to graduate cum laude out of Southern University.
Well, that's excellent. You had a second chance, and everybody deserves a second chance. And sometimes you can do fantastically well if you get another go at it.
Now, Paul, you're an engineer. You got an engineering degree from Pittsburgh. How'd you wind up in the Navy with an engineering degree?
Well, I wanted to be I wanted to be an engineer. My father was an engineer. He was a civil engineer. And we never really talked about it too much, but it was just kind of like an expectation that you'd go that way. It seemed reasonable. I was able to do the work, for the most part. When I couldn't, relied on friends to, help me through. We all kind of helped each other. It was a very small group. But how I ended up in the Navy was kind of strange. I really actually wanted to go to the Air Force. I was part of ROTC. I saw what the Air Force was doing. I enjoyed that, and things were going really, really well until a little bit after the Vietnam War ended formally. There was a big reduction in force. The Air Force wasn't taking people, and they sure weren't taking pilots. And I had no interest in doing anything else. And they gave
So
us,
you, Paul, you
yes,
always wanted to be a pilot?
I always did from about the age of 5. But one thing I didn't add is that, that part of Queens where I was in St. Albans, Queens, off Linden Boulevard, just in the distance, you could see planes flying, overhead. They were landing at JFK. The flight path was probably maybe 3 miles away. So you'd see these planes going. I was just fascinated by them. And around this time, the jet age started. So you'd see these 707s, loud and smoky engines. You'd see them going across, and adults were complaining about them all the time. They were always really, really angry. I thought they were great. I loved them. So I was always fascinated by flight. I was never afraid of it. And I didn't think about it. I said it'd be nice to do at the age of 5. I didn't really think about it again until about the age of 18 when I'm in Pittsburgh and ROTC. Jump on the airplane. That's how I got there. I flew to Pittsburgh. That's when I think a ticket was like $8. It was great. It was like $10. Flew there, and I said, "Boy, this is really cool." Got off the plane, and it went out of my mind. Got back into Pittsburgh, in the ROTC. Took us to a base one weekend, and the Thunderbirds. I didn't know what the Thunderbirds were, but the Air Force Flight Demonstration Team were practicing for a show they were going to do the next day. We just happened to be there. I guess they had no rules this time. We were at it's in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, in a motel on the water, and I hear this incredible noise. They couldn't have been 200 feet over at times. They just did this show, and I was hooked on jets right there. That was it. That was the gateway drugs.
Wow. Well, the first time I ever saw jets, let me tell you, I forgot to tell you, I was bar mitzvahed at 13 years old in Brooklyn, and my bar mitzvah had black and white people there. My parents and my grandparents were so proud of me. A young little black boy in an all white synagogue doing his prayers better than anybody could have ever done them. My parents and grandparents were so proud of me. Actually, at my bar mitzvah, something happened. I had a cousin with Down syndrome that I never met before. And for some reason, my father wanted her to be in all the important pictures. And my grandmother was like, well, no, she doesn't have to be in this picture anyway. I'll show you a picture with all of us in there at the cake ceremony at my bar mitzvah. But I later found out that my cousin, this young lady, after she had passed away, she told her mom that my bar mitzvah was the greatest day in her life. And I don't know how dad knew that, but he did. But I'm telling you about the bar mitzvah because the next year, I actually was an exchange student in Israel. So for my 10th year of high school, I went to Israel. And that's where I first saw jets. I saw F-4s flying overhead, but they weren't flying. They weren't flying for practice. They were actually going to do missions in Lebanon and Syria because I lived in the northern part of Israel on a kibbutz called Kfar Bloom. And I actually saw those badass F-4s, never thinking I would do that. But that's the first time I ever was introduced to jets, Paul.
Yeah, that's interesting. We were both basically hypnotized by F4 families.
How about that? Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, at a young age, relatively young. You younger than me, probably. Yeah.
So I still didn't want to go. I never thought about the military one day in my life. But when I graduated college at Southern University, I had gotten married to a wonderful, beautiful girl named Lori Guimont. And she had a big family. Like you said, I'm an only child. You're an only child. That's another thing we have very much in common. But Lori had a great big family, and they were the best. And I took them all in as sisters and brothers. And I really had a good time. I got married as a senior, and then I had my daughter, Taryn Christine Brown. So when I finished college, I needed a job. I needed a job because I had to take care of my children. Well, my daughter at that point. And what I did is I started going door to door selling television ads, selling water purification systems, anything I had to do to take care of my family. One day I looked in the newspapers and there was an ad for a salesperson. I went to the Marriott in New Orleans. I actually got the job. And there, me and a guy named Richard Tahn, we came up with an idea for me to go to Las Vegas and work these championship fights. So I did the marketing for almost 2 years for championship fights out in Las Vegas. That means I lived in Vegas as a 21, 22-year-old man having another great time in my life, a little bit too good of a time, but that's what I was doing. And believe it or not, I did a lot of magazines for these fights. My dad wasn't very proud of me. He said, you went to college and you're doing the same hustling I could have done. I had a good time in Las Vegas. From there, I came back to New Orleans. And believe it or not, Paul, I opened up the number one nightclub in New Orleans. I had a nightclub called Bundini's. It was the number one nightclub in New Orleans. And I did it with no money. I figured out that New Orleans has a 24/7 liquor law. So you can serve liquor 365 all the time in New Orleans. What I did is I rented out this beautiful restaurant called the Old Spaghetti Factory. And on Friday and Saturday nights from midnight to dawn, I opened up a nightclub. I kept the door, and the deal was he could keep all the liquor, all the bar sales. And so for 2 years, I had the number one nightclub in New Orleans. And I'm telling you that because once again, I had a little bit too much fun. By then, I had my son, Drew Jacques Brown the fourth. So I was in kind of a, I didn't know what the hell to do. I really didn't. But owning a nightclub, that wasn't my life because I was like the best customer I had. And that's where I started to think, what am I going to be when I grow up, Paul? And I came up with this idea of from A to Z, start thinking of all the things I could do. A, animal trainer, architect, archaeologist, and then from B, barber, whatever it was, A through Z. Well, this thing, pilot, came up. And I remember when I used to fly down to Miami, going to see the champ and my dad, I used to think pilots, airline pilots, were the coolest people in the world. They had the flight attendants. They used to call them stewardesses back then. And it was just a cool feeling. I found out that airline pilots make a lot of money and they only work half the month. Paul, that's the time I said, I'm going to be an airline pilot. I made up my mind to be a pilot, I think 2 months before I ever joined the military. I didn't know how to be a pilot. I had no money. And so I guess, like you went to the Air Force, I went to the Air Force too. They love me. As you know, if you're a qualified Black person in the military and you have your education, you want to be a pilot, you're very rare. So they were very happy to take me. Well, I got into the Air Force. They said, but my class started in 16 weeks. Paul, I needed a job at that point in my life. I couldn't wait 16 weeks. A guy in the Air Force said, go down to the Navy, try them. I said, I don't want to be on ships. I want to be a pilot. He said, go down there. Those are the greatest pilots in the world. I went down there. There are so few Black pilots in the United States Navy. I was in the United States Navy in 11 days in AOCS, Paul. Tell me about your piloting and how you got into it.
Yeah, I said, like I said, when the Air Force said no, we're not taking any pilots from ROTC. You can come in and do something else, or you can go. I elected to go, and I was kind of confronted with the same thing. I could be an engineer, but I really, really wanted to fly. One thing was, later that summer, the summer before, I had actually worked for Procter and Gamble for a summer in Cincinnati, Ohio, and that was actually great. It wasn't exciting work. I wasn't particularly interested in it, but they paid a lot, and they paid so much that I was able to complete my private pilot's license in Cincinnati, Ohio, and that was fantastic. That was really my calling, and I think I came and I had money left over, so I came with a private pilot's license. I said, I really want to do this, and I was getting ready to graduate from school, and I was interviewing for jobs, and I saw this guy in the corner. He was in like a white suit. He had some ribbons and stuff. He was sitting by himself. And I remember he had black hair. And I just went over. He had some promotional materials, and it said "Flying Navy." I said, "Oh, well, what's this?" I knew nothing about it. And we talked about a few things. And who are you? What do you want to do? I said, "Well, yeah, I'd like to fly." His eyes lit up. Long time I didn't know he was like the #1 naval aviation recruiter in the United States at that time. His name was Farley. His last name was Farley. I told him my background, what I was doing. I was in ROTC. His eyes lit up. He said, "Hey, come downtown, take this test." Took the test, took the written test. That went fine. Long story short, process me. He said, "If you want to come in, you know, uh, you can come in. We can, if you want to go to Pensacola, go to OCS, we'll set it up. You can even go down on a trip for a weekend that we'll pay for. You can check it out and see if it's something you really want to do." I said, "Sure." Did that, came back. I said, "Yeah, I want to do it." And then I graduated college like a month later. He processed everything. And basically, I had orders to go to Pensacola in the beginning of, I think it was in late June or something like that. It was hot. It was super hot. And that was it. It was very, very, very short. So I was out at our school, and about 8 weeks later, I'm down in Pensacola being greeted by the Marine Corps drill instructors.
Well, very similar. I went to Pensacola knowing nothing about the military, knowing nothing about flying, knowing nothing about nothing, just realizing I had a job that was going to give me a check every 2 weeks for sure. So, right then and there, I met somebody who had changed my life. And I mean, really has changed my life. That was my gunnery sergeant, Clark. Gunnery Sergeant Clark really stripped me down to nothing and then built me up to be the kind of man that I am today. I am going to stop it right there because we're going to do a part two, Paul, starting next week. So, right now, I just want to talk about those jets behind us. Believe it or not, those are the two jets that Dr. Paul and myself flew. There's an A7 Corsair there and an A6 Intruder. The trip is they are both AI generated. So those are not real airplanes. We told AI to make airplanes. We told them what kind of night, and there they are. Those are AI generated airplanes. So everybody out there, thank you so much for supporting us. We truly do appreciate it. This is our 200th show, and we thank you for all the support you have given us. We have a website, and our website is wingmanshow.com. That's wingmanshow.com. And on that website, we give newsletters. On that website, we actually have something called the frequent flow line where you can actually write Dr. Paul and myself and ask us any question you want, and we will try to get that question answered on the air. But we want to thank you once again for watching us on YouTube, listening to us on Apple Podcasts, watching our shorts on TikTok, Instagram, and everything else. Our newsletter this week will be the 11 Facts in Life. And that's something that I came up with a long time ago when I started speaking to kids, which we'll talk about next week. But I want to give you the 11 Facts in Life because I think that's important. And that's what we're going to combine. We have a gouge section. And Dr. Paul and I, we know that gouge is shit you need to know. That's what they call it in the Navy. shit you need to know, but nobody tells you. Well, here's the gouge for this week, and it's called the 11 Facts in Life. I'm just going to do the short version. You can get the full version on my website, drewbrown.net or wingmanshow.com, either one. But here are the 11 facts in life. And these are the facts because when I spoke to kids, I needed to know how can you become successful? You can't just tell them be successful. So I wrote these. Fact number one to being successful: wake up, show up, and pay attention, especially to detail. Fact two: be happy, be nice, and have fun. Fact three: everything you do comes back to you. Fact four: have purpose, find your gift and use it. Fact five: the art of thought, the art of communication, the art of action. Fact six: good will overcome evil. Avoid these 8 deadly sins: pride, envy, anger, sloth, greed, gluttony, and alcohol and drugs. Fact number 7: use common sense and moderation. Fact 8: emit integrity and respect. Fact 9: develop self discipline. Fact 10: treat others as you want to be treated. And fact number 11 is the name of my best selling book, too. It's called You Gotta Believe. Paul, those are the 11 facts in life. And that's how I became successful. Believe it or not, I'm sure that's how you became successful. What do you think about that, Paul?
I think a lot. I think, again, I think everyone should look at those 11 facts of life. They're very good, they're instructive, they're simple, and they're essential things that you need to do. To those who are watching us, we appreciate your support. For listening, liking, sharing our message, getting a little background on who we are, what we come from, what we've done, and what we're trying to be. Take care of yourselves. Respond to us on the frequent flow line and ask a question. We'll try to answer it as quickly as possible. And for all of you out there, we appreciate your support again. Have a good life.
Thank you very much, everybody. And it's really important that 2 young, Black, successful men get on the air. And this is not a black or white show. This is a human being show. It's just that it's important to know that there are people with hard work and determination that can make it in this country. So everybody out there, whatever you think is important, whatever you think is beautiful, and most importantly, whatever makes you happy, may you have that today and forever. I pray for peace.
I pray for peace too, Commander Drew, and I look forward to continuing this discussion.
Thank you once again, Dr. Paul Thompson, my friend. Thank you for your love, your time, and that's something that we won't ever get back. I want to thank all the listeners too. Thank you so much for doing the show, Dr. Paul. We're jamming.
Well, thank you, Mr. Drew, for inviting me on. Always good to talk to you. And ladies and gentlemen, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this podcast or any of the podcasts. If you're looking at YouTube, they say smash the like button. Don't smash it. Just press it gently and refer to use as a link to all your friends. You can also look at us on our website, wingmenshow.com, WINGMEN show, SHOW.com, altogether, wingmenshow.com. And we hope to see you in the future. Thanks again, Mr. Drew.
Oh, you're welcome. And we're still floating like butterflies and stinging like bees. Rumble, you badass jet pilots, rumble. May there be peace on earth and goodwill towards all men and women.